a HASP member. He has coordinated and presented the electrification of transportation, a history, in spring of 2018, and then gave us the first electric vehicle update in the fall last year. He has, among other things, a BA in economics, an MSc in artificial intelligence, and a PhD in machine learning. So we're going to find out about some of Gary's adventures behind the wheel and get an update on options out there that may be of interest to us for our garage. So without further ado, here's Gary.
Thank you, Bruce. Give me a moment here to share my screen, and we will get started. As you heard, we're going to be running a little bit tight on time. So there are going to be two Q&A sessions after I finish the first 45 to 60 minutes of factual presentation. I'll stop and we can take questions as much as you like about the material I've presented. And afterwards, then there will be a somewhat more subjective period, followed by another Q&A. Because we're going to be taking specific Q&A sessions, I would encourage you, if you can, to just hold your questions until we get to those, and then you can simply speak by unmuting yourself and ask your question that way. As Susan said, if you're shy, then you can feel free to put in a question in the chat. Here's an outline of what we're going to be talking about. First, a quick recap of why electric vehicles are the hot topic that they are. We'll talk about the incentives and mandates that are pushing the market. We're going to talk about battery technology because so much exciting news has been coming out in the last 6 months. I will then do a review of all the major auto manufacturers and outline what their strategies are for electrification, and they differ quite a bit. Then we'll take a question and answer break, perhaps after I have reminded you of the data spreadsheet that was sent to you all prior to the class. After we've dealt with all the questions about the factual material, I'm going to present what I consider the best of class for each of the types of electric vehicles. That's my subjective opinion, which you are free to argue with. And then there will be a final Q&A session at the end. Okay, why EVs? Well, the big reason is climate change. As I'm sure you know, transportation is responsible for the largest share of greenhouse gases. So if we can simply rein in the amount of greenhouse gas being emitted by our cars, trucks, trains, and airplanes, we can put a serious dent into the emissions for the entire country. There are lots of specific reasons why electric vehicles are an excellent way to do this. As you know, gasoline engines get dirtier as they get older because the parts wear, tolerances get increased, and cars are able to travel shorter and shorter distances on a given amount of fuel. Electric vehicles, on the other hand, get cleaner as they age. For one thing, their equipment just doesn't wear out as fast, but they get all their electricity from the energy grid, and the energy grid is quickly becoming cleaner. So if you buy an electric vehicle now, it will become even better for the environment in the future. Also, oil and gas, someday are going to become scarce resources. And when that happens, we're going to need to find other ways to fuel transportation. The wind and the sun are not likely to wear out anytime soon. Right now, even though the United States, because of fracking, has become much more energy independent, we are still importing oil from the Mideast and from other countries. Many of those sources are not necessarily our friends. Importing oil is tough on the US economy. It provides funds to countries that are potential adversaries. And we're spending a fair amount of money in our military budget protecting the oil transit routes from the Mideast to the United States. Above all that, electric vehicles are simply more energy efficient. The very best gas cars these days get about 40 miles to the gallon. but the best electric vehicles get over 100 miles per gallon equivalent. You're going to see that term a lot, so let me explain it. If you were to find the amount of electricity which provides the same amount of energy as a gallon of gasoline, that would be a gallon equivalent. So electric vehicles get more than twice as much travel out of a gallon equivalent of energy. Consumer Reports released a study earlier this year in which they said that electric vehicles indeed cost more to purchase up front, 10 to 40% more. But they concluded that over the life of a car, most owners would save between $6,000 and $10,000 in running costs over the life of that car. And the advantage is greatest for heavier vehicles, such as SUVs. So Consumer Reports concluded that right now, with current technology, electric vehicles are a good investment. Northwestern University did another study. They looked at what would happen if 75% of the cars on the American road were electric vehicles, and if the energy grid continued to become greener as they replace coal-fired plants with more efficient and more effective and sometimes renewable sources. Their conclusion, 75% of US cars being electric would produce $70 billion a year in savings for US citizens. That's not just the reduced cost of fuel, it's also reduced expenses for maintenance and repairs, and also reduced medical bills, because greenhouse gases not only hurt the planet, they hurt our lungs. Even if only 25% of the cars on American roads were electric, savings to the US would be $17 billion a year. And that's savings not to the government, that's savings to us. Finally, electric cars are simply a lot of fun. You may remember the original Tesla Roadster that was such an amazing performance car that it really launched Tesla. I drive a very sedate sedan, a Honda Clarity plug-in hybrid. But because it's electric, it produces maximum torque at 0 RPM, which means my very ordinary Honda Clarity is really quick off the line. As Bruce mentioned, 2.5 years ago, we did our first HASP session on electric vehicles. After we had talked about the various advantages of electric cars, I asked the question of the audience. I said, anybody here actually own an electric car? And one lady raised her hand, and I asked her what she had. She said they had a Tesla Model S. So I asked her how she liked it. And she told me, well, it's very clean, it's very quiet, it's very roomy and comfortable. And she paused for a minute, kind of a smile spread over her face. And she said, and every once in a while, it's kind of fun to blow off a Corvette. Electric cars are really quick. Bottom line is, electric cars are a fast growing segment of the worldwide auto industry. In 2019, electric vehicles were 2.2% of the world market for automobiles. Even this year, in Europe, EV sales are up, even though other fossil fueled car sales are down. That's not the case in the US. But interest in EVs is growing rapidly. In fact, US global automakers have announced plans for well over $300 billion in immediate investments preparing for their transition to electric vehicles. Maybe another way of expressing the bottom line is this. You probably recognize this as a New York City taxi. That's also a Tesla Model 3. And you probably saw the headline in the Sentinel that the city of Holland is buying a Tesla for police staff to drive. Organizations that manage fleets of vehicles for a living are concluding that electric vehicles are a good investment, and they are buying large numbers of them. What's driving the market for individuals is incentives, and what's driving automakers is, in some cases, mandates. As you all know, there's a federal electric vehicle tax credit for up to $7,500 credit in your taxes if you buy a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle or a battery electric vehicle. Right now, all of these companies are eligible for that $7,500 credit. In fact, there's only 3 companies that are not eligible: Tesla, General Motors, and Nissan. Wait a minute, what's wrong with this picture? 2 American companies that have really helped to pioneer electric vehicles are no longer eligible for the credit. Why? Because they sold more than 200,000 electric vehicles so far. This picture may need to be fixed in the near future. In fact, last year, there was a bipartisan bill to extend the credits on electric vehicles. It was killed by the Trump administration, but it did have a fair amount of support in Congress. The limit of 200,000 vehicles per manufacturer was going to be raised to 600,000, which would have helped General Motors a lot because so far they've all sold less than 250,000 cars. Wouldn't have helped Tesla much because they're selling over 200,000 cars a year right now. But then again, Tesla doesn't own very many congressmen. They were going to cut the credit from 7,500 to 7,000 and limit it to households with a maximum income of 250K. But still, this was going to be a major expansion of the credit. Well, the Biden administration has both climate and clean energy as very high priorities. The current authority of California and 18 other states that follow their rules for tighter emissions have been challenged by the Trump administration in court. But on January 20th, Joe Biden will have the authority to restore that authority completely by executive order, and he has pledged to do so. So I think an extended EV credit and a higher volume limit could be introduced early next year as part of a tax bill or as part of a stimulus bill or just an infrastructure. So in terms of incentives, stay tuned. In terms of mandates, California was one of the first to announce a mandate. They said that by 2035, they're going to ban the sale of anything except zero emission vehicles in the state of California. And New Jersey announced just a month or so ago that they are seriously considering following California's lead. China, which is the world's largest car market, has also announced that they're going to ban the sale of any fossil fueled vehicles. They have not yet set a date, but so far their emissions policies have mimicked California. So I'm betting on 2035 or sooner for China. Other nations have also announced bans. The most aggressive is Norway. In just over 4 years, it's going to be illegal to buy a fossil fueled car in Norway. By 2030, a large number of nations, including most of Europe, is going to be banning fossil fueled cars. The United Kingdom will ban pure gas and diesel cars in that year. They'll wait until 2035 to ban hybrid vehicles and plug-ins. After 2035, in both the UK, in Europe, Quebec, and possibly other provinces of Canada, and in California, it's going to be illegal to sell a gas-powered car. So if you're the manufacturer of automobiles, what conclusion would you draw? Better get a move on, because gas-powered cars are going to become dinosaurs. Some of the most exciting news in electric vehicles recently has been around the rapid innovation going on in battery technology. CATL is China's largest battery manufacturer. They supply the batteries for a number of Chinese electric cars. And they announced 2 months ago that they have developed and are ready to sell right now a 1,000,000-mile battery, a battery that they will guarantee for 16 years. That is such a long battery life that it would probably well exceed the life of a car that you would put it in. So they have immediately created a market for used batteries that would still be very effective. And the cost of these batteries is going to be only 10% more than they're currently charging for their lithium-ion conventional batteries. A Korean company, SKI, has developed a battery that it is trying to market to the auto industry. It can be fully recharged in 10 minutes flat. Toyota was initially somewhat resistant to battery electric vehicles, but they saw the light last year and they have switched rather aggressively to pursue battery electric. and they're going for the gold. They're not even going to try to build a car running on lithium ion batteries. They are, they said last month, still on track for producing a car in 2025 that will have a solid state battery. This is a kind of a golden state that a lot of companies are pursuing, but Toyota feels that they are on track to be able to not only have such a battery, but to put it in a production vehicle in less than 5 years. Solid state batteries are safer, they are lighter, they produce more energy per unit of volume. You can fully charge one in 15 minutes, and Toyota is projecting battery life at 25 years. That is a major breakthrough. And Toyota said just last month, they're still on track. Volkswagen, the world's largest producer of vehicles, is also pursuing solid state, and they have said that by, quote, mid-decade, they expect to be selling cars with solid state batteries. And General Motors has also announced just last week that they are pursuing new battery chemistries. Many people believe that it will be solid state, but their goal is they are pursuing a battery that will be 60% cheaper than their current battery supplies. That will enable them to make a lot of money selling electric cars. And of course, as you probably know, September 22nd of this year was Tesla Battery Day. I was quite surprised that the media panned the whole event because Tesla unveiled not a product, but just a plan for a product. They announced a combination of changes to battery chemistry, changes to the way in which they build batteries, changes in the cell design, and also, quite surprisingly, ways in which they can integrate a battery pack into the frame of a vehicle. They feel that the cumulative effect of these changes in chemistry and manufacturing process can produce a 54% increase in range, a cost reduction of 56% for the finished batteries, and that it would reduce by almost 70% the amount of investment that automakers would have to make in battery manufacturing technology. The bottom line, according to Elon Musk, they feel that by 2023, they can produce a compelling car for $25,000. That'll be a car that's equal to or less than the cost of a similar car with a gas engine. Other things are going on in battery tech as well. Wireless inductive charging is something that is still in the background, but is starting to make a move to the mainstream. Now, some of you may not be familiar with that term, but you're all familiar with wireless charging. If you have an electric toothbrush, if you have a cordless electric razor, every time you put that in its charging stand, you are using wireless inductive charging. BMW is currently running a pilot test in California with their 5 Series sedan. They have equipped those cars with the automotive half of a wireless charging system, and they have leased to some of their California customers the pad that you put on your garage floor that allows you to just drive the car up over the pad, and as soon as you're in position, the car is ready to charge. You don't have to worry about a plug. Mitsubishi, Japanese manufacturer, has recently purchased Witricity, which is a company that manufactures wireless charging for cars and buses. And most importantly, the Society of Automotive Engineers has recently published a charging standard so that you can buy a car from anyone you want, buy a charging pad from anyone you want, and it will always work. Another area of rapid improvement is in the public fast charging network. Earlier this year, Tesla established their 2,000th fast charging station. They have more than 18,000 supercharger plugs in North America at those stations. Those enable Teslas to drive almost anywhere in the country without worrying about running out of juice, because they can recharge at a very fast rate at a Tesla supercharging station along interstates and in major cities. Almost all other electric cars run on something called the Combined Charging Standard, or CCS. already earlier this year, there was a total of 3,500 CCS charging stations in North America. That's combining all different networks. There are at least 4 major companies that are all building out electric charging networks and selling memberships to people who have electric cars so that they can simply pull up to a CCS charging station, plug in their car, and it will be charged to their credit card. Now, recently, all of the major charging networks have signed interoperability and payment agreements. That means that if you belong to ChargePoint, you can still pull up to a CCS charging station that was built by Electrify America. Not only will it charge your car, but they will charge you through your ChargePoint payment system. And of course, if you drive a Tesla, you have the best of both worlds because you can get an adapter for your Tesla that allows you to also pull up to those CCS charging stations. You won't charge as fast as at a Tesla supercharger, but you'll still be able to charge up your car. So range anxiety is quickly becoming a thing of the past. Now, those are just numbers. Here's a map of all the CCS charging stations in Michigan and the surrounding areas. And as you can see, this looks like pretty decent coverage. It's not too far between stations down here in lower Michigan, and even driving up toward the Big Mac, there are places that you can stop and recharge your car. Each of those green dots represents a charging station that has 1 or more plugs. Here's just one of those. This is the green dot that was shown in the Grand Rapids area. It's a Meijer store on Walker Avenue. And if you have a car that uses either the CHAdeMO or the CCS charging standard, there are 4 plugs available at that store. So you can charge up your car while you're buying your milk. The bottom line, according to Bloomberg New Energy Finance, quote, battery electric vehicles will cost less than equivalent gas-powered vehicles by 2025. General Motors has issued statements indicating that they agree with Bloomberg. The middle of this decade is going to be when you're actually going to pay a premium to get a gas-powered car. Elon Musk has said that by 2023, electric vehicles at the same or lower purchase price than a gas car. Only 3 years away. Consumer Reports, of course, has said that the long-term total cost of ownership for electrics is already less than gas-powered cars. So the bottom line is, an electric vehicle is already a wise financial investment, and the numbers are going to be getting better rapidly. Obviously, with so many companies ramping up to produce electric vehicles and with sales increasing by a considerable amount every year, there were worries that there weren't going to be enough batteries in the world to supply all these cars. So most manufacturers are now building battery factories. Tesla was the first. They have 2 factories that are completed and operating in Nevada and in Shanghai, China. They have 2 more under construction, one in Berlin, Germany, one in Austin, Texas. And they have 2 more on the drawing boards. They're going to produce batteries either in England or somewhere on the European continent, and also put up a second plant in Asia, probably outside of China. In addition to that, General Motors and our favorite company, LG Chem, have announced plans to jointly build a battery plant in Lordstown, Ohio. That's near the auto plant that they closed. They're also building one together in Wrocław, Poland for European sales. The General Motors Vice President for Electrics has said he believes that building your own batteries is the key to controlling your costs. And GM is very much focused on getting the costs down. Mercedes and BMW in Europe are building new battery factory, a very large one in Germany. They're also building a large plant in South Carolina. That's near BMW's plant in, I forget the name of the town, but they have a plant in South Carolina. Samsung and SKI are major battery manufacturers. They're building 4 new battery factories in Hungary to take advantage of the lower labor costs in Eastern Europe, etc. Everyone who is in the automobile business is now either in or preparing to get in the battery business. I have to mention autonomous vehicles because so far, every major self-driving project uses electric vehicles. Waymo, Tesla, GM's Cruise project, Uber, all of them are using electric vehicles. And there's a good reason, because an autonomous vehicle requires a huge amount of computing power. They have LiDAR sensors, radar, many cameras. If you're going to be running all that high-powered electrical equipment, why not mount it on a huge mobile battery? An EV is a perfect match for an autonomous vehicle. As you probably know, Google's subsidiary Waymo is running a project in Phoenix where they are using self-driving taxis that are all Chrysler Pacifica plug-in hybrids. And as of earlier this month, they are now allowing members of their self-driving taxi club, I guess you would call it, to order cars and bring along family members that are not members of the club, and the cars may or may not have an onboard engineer. They feel that they're getting pretty close to having a full self-driving taxi service for the city of Phoenix. And as you've probably read, Tesla is currently distributing to Tesla owners who are volunteered to be part of a beta test what they call their full self-driving 4D package. That is a self-driving package that they feel is going to be good enough for basically hands-free driving on certainly all expressways and most American roads. So with that technical background, let's do a quick review of manufacturer strategies. Every company has a slightly different approach. And let's start with General Motors. General Motors has taken a very interesting stand. They've said they are not interested in building hybrid cars. They did build one plug-in hybrid, the Chevy Volt. They have discontinued that. They are focused strictly on battery electrics. They have said that by 2025, they expect to have 30 battery electric vehicles on the market that will be price comparable with gas cars. So when you buy a General Motors car starting in approximately 2025, you're going to have your choice at the same price point, and not too far in the future, you're actually going to pay a premium to buy a gas-powered GM car. General Motors has pledged that they are going to be profitable from the beginning, and so far they're living up to that. Their first electric cars are the Cadillac Lyriq and the Hummer. Both of those are rather pricey cars, and you better believe they're making money on those. General Motors, for a long time, ignored the charging problem, but recently they've seen the light and they have invested heavily in the EVgo charging network. That's one of the big four. Honda. Interestingly enough, Honda got into hybrid vehicles fairly early, and the Honda Accord Hybrid is a very strong car that has sold very well nationwide. But until recently, they didn't have any other electrified vehicles. 2 years ago, they came out with the Clarity plug-in, and that car has sold so well in California and the other states that follow California's emissions rules that right now, if you want to buy one in Michigan, you'll have to special order it through your Honda dealer. I checked with them just last week. You can in fact do that, but if you want to drive one before you buy it, you'll have to call me because they don't have any in their showroom. Honda still does not have any battery electric cars that are announced, although it's pretty clear that they're moving in that direction. They have formed a joint enterprise with General Motors that is going to be doing electric vehicle and battery research here in the United States, and they will be entitled to all the technology that's developed in that center. They've also formed a partnership with CATL, that's China's largest battery manufacturer, again, claiming the right to use whatever technology they develop. And as you'll remember, CATL is the company that has announced a 1,000,000-mile battery. So Honda is a little late to the party, but they're going to be jumping in with both feet. Ford did not jump on electric vehicles very quickly, but right now they have several hybrid vehicles, the Fusion and Escape sedans and the Explorer. The Fusion is also available as a plug-in hybrid, but most of the noise around Ford Electrics is about their announcement of two vehicles, one of which is available right about now. And that's the Mustang Mach-E SUV. That's the car that you saw on my initial slide. It is a pretty good looking car. It has some very interesting specs, and a lot of people think this is going to be a big seller. Among those that are into pickup trucks, Ford has already announced that the F-150, their best-selling vehicle, is going to be available as an electric. You may have seen the video where they have shown a prototype of the F-150 electric pulling a railroad train with over 1 million pounds of cars. It's a pretty powerful truck. Ford's been late to the party, but a lot of people think that an electric F-150 is going to be a game changer. The Korean manufacturers, Hyundai and Kia, have been keeping up with the electric trend. They have a Tucson SUV, and they have the Ioniq and Sonata sedans that are hybrids. Those three cars are also available right now as plug-in hybrids. And the Ioniq is available as a battery electric sedan. And the Kona, which is a compact SUV, is also battery electric. Hyundai has indicated that they intend to make the full transition, but they haven't made any major announcements about deadlines. Toyota, the world's second largest manufacturer. Interestingly, they helped to pioneer electric vehicles because the Toyota Prius was the very first hybrid vehicle, well, not the first one available, but it was the first bestseller in this country. And they have a Prius Prime, which is a plug-in. The Camry hybrid was and still is a very big success. It's an amazing car. And yet, for a lot of years, Toyota said they were not interested in going beyond hybrids. They didn't think battery electrics were a good idea. Well, last year, they changed their mind in a big way. They now don't have any battery electrics announced for either the 21 or 22 model years, but they are committed to producing a car by 2025 that will have a solid state battery. They and a lot of people feel that that's going to be a game changer. Fiat Chrysler is a fairly small company. They do not have much in the way of electric products. There is a Jeep Wrangler 4xe plug-in that's going to become available within the next few months. That's the only Jeep model that we know of that is expected to be electrified. As I mentioned, the Chrysler Pacifica is a car that Waymo is very fond of. It is a plug-in hybrid. I'll give you some specs on it later, but Waymo is a big believer in that, and they have been selling a fair number of them. The largest manufacturer in the world is the Volkswagen Group, and VW is very much committed. Their commitment, frankly, was partially inspired by all their embarrassment over Dieselgate when they got caught cheating on their diesels, which were pretty well-respected vehicles. They decided they were going to pivot strongly from diesels to electric, and they have pivoted very strongly. They have a car called the ID.4, which is a battery electric SUV. It's the first Volkswagen battery electric that they're going to be selling in the US. And they think that by 2025, they're going to be selling 500,000 a year of just that one car. But that won't be their only car. Their global goal is that they'll be selling 3 million battery electric vehicles every year by 2025. And they expect their volume by 2027 to total 22 million cars. Their Audi division already has one battery electric on the market, the e-tron Sportback. It's a pretty nifty car. And they have committed that 1/3 of all models on sale in the US will be electric by 2025. Their Porsche division already has the Porsche Taycan, which is an electric sports car. You can buy that one now. Starting next year, they're going to be making an electric SUV called the Porsche Macan. I hope I pronounced that right. And they're committed that half of their lineup will be electric by 2025. BMW has not made a big splash, but they have done a fair amount in the way of electrics. Right now, they make a 330E, a 530E, and a 745E that are all plug-in hybrid electric sedans. They are genuine BMWs. They are identical to the gas-powered versions in terms of the body and so on, but they are electric plug-ins. In their SUV line, they have an X3 and an X5 that they call X-Drive. Those are plug-ins. And they have a very expensive and very fast sports car called the i8. They have pledged that by 2023, they're going to have 25 electric vehicles, 12 of them battery electrics and 13 plug-ins. So BMW is pivoting in a big way to electric cars. Mercedes has designated a new series of cars, the EQ series. They will all be electrics. The pure EQ series will be battery electric. There will be an EQ Power series of plug-ins. And the first car in that lineup will be available starting in just a couple of months. It will be a battery electric version of their S-Class sedan, their largest, most luxurious sedan. They have said that they will have a full EQ lineup. All their various size cars will be available as electrics by 22 or 23. Volvo, we often think of as a Swedish car company, and they still are manufactured there. As you may recall, Ford bought Volvo about 10 years ago when Volvo got into financial trouble. And then when Ford started having some hard times during the financial crisis, they sold Volvo to Geely, which is a large manufacturer of electric vehicles in China. Volvo under Geely now has two different SUVs or wagons, if you will, that are plug-in hybrids, the XC60 and 90. They have 3 sedans that are plug-ins, and they have one SUV, the XC40 Recharge, which is a battery electric. They also have formed a separate division to produce battery electric luxury vehicles. The Polestar 1 was a plug-in hybrid sports sedan that was fairly expensive, but the Polestar 2 is a battery electric sedan that was designed from the ground up. It is in the best traditions of Volvo. It's a pretty solid car, and it is very competitively priced to compete with the Tesla Model S. All these cars, including the Polestar 2, are available now. And Volvo is committed to a fully electrified lineup in the near future. Some say as early as the end of next year. Jaguar, famous British make, already has one battery electric car on the market. It's called the Jaguar I-Pace. It's an SUV. And next year, they are expected to bring out a battery electric version of their famous XJ sedan. That's the long, slinky one. They have committed that all Jaguars will be either hybrids, plug-ins, or battery electrics by 2025. And finally, of course, Tesla. They're the ones that really pioneered high-performance battery electric cars. They currently have 4 vehicles in their lineup. The Model S sedan, that's the car that broke the Consumer Reports rating scale. The first time they rated a Model S, when they added up all the points, it was more than 100, and they had always thought that they had a 100-point rating scale. They said at the time it was the finest automobile of any type that they had ever tested and evaluated. Model 3 is the affordable version of the Tesla sedan. And they also have 2 SUVs, the Model X, that's the one with the fancy X-wing doors in the back. And the Model Y is an affordable SUV that is basically built on the Model 3 chassis. There are also 3 other vehicles coming from Tesla that are announced. They're going to be produced either in 21 or 22. The one that is certainly going to be available in 21 is the Cybertruck. I'll show you a picture of that later. That's a very funky looking vehicle. They've also committed that they are going to produce another version of the Roadster. This one will be even faster and less expensive. And of course, there is the Tesla Semi, a semi truck that is capable of hauling full trailers with tremendous torque and with a battery range of 500 miles. And of course, their most exciting announcement is that they expect to produce a compelling sedan for $25,000 in either well, they said 23. It's Elon Musk, so I added a year. But certainly within the next 4 years, they're going to have a very, very attractive offering at a very attractive price. This leads us to kind of what the nerd's dilemma. And I say that with a little bit of pride. I'm a nerd. But you know, it's the same as you go through when you're thinking about buying a computer or a laptop. You know, when the technology is changing quickly, you're not really sure when to spring. With today's electric tech and prices, already buying an electric vehicle is a better financial investment than a gas-powered car, at least according to Consumer Reports. But there's all these new models that are going to be available next year or 22, so maybe we should wait for those. But even after that period of time, there is such exciting advances going on in battery tech. Maybe if you wait a few more years, you can have one of those exciting new batteries. And the federal tax credits may be revised in 2021, and who knows, maybe even later. When is the right time to pick an EV? Well, there are a couple of strategies that you might consider. The first one is real simple. If there's currently an electric car that meets your needs, and it's already a wise financial decision, buy it. Or if you've got your heart set on a Mustang Mach-E or some other model that's coming available this coming year, or maybe in 22, consider simply leasing an electric vehicle for 3 years and then buy your dream. In fact, even if you're convinced that the tech is going to continue to improve rapidly for the next 10 years, well, do a series of 3-year leases. When the tech has finally matured, then you can buy your dream car. Or maybe your third lease should be the dream car, and then you can buy it when the lease ends. But there are lots of ways that you can be part of the electric vehicle revolution without feeling that you're committing yourself to outdated technology. All of you who signed up for the course received from Kim Mendels earlier, I think last week, a spreadsheet that I produced. And this is something that I'll invite you to take a look at afterwards. I think she passed out a PDF version that you can only look at or print, but I sent her a Microsoft Excel version as well. And if you really would like to play with this spreadsheet in Excel or your favorite spreadsheet program, ask Kim to send you the XLS version. This is an almost complete list of all the hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and battery electrics that are on the market now or have been announced for next year or very early in 22. There are almost 70 vehicles on this spreadsheet, more than we can talk about today. But that's all the data, so far as I know, as of about 10 days ago. Now, at this point, I want to stop and ask if anybody has questions. We've been at this for almost an hour. So what are your questions about what we've talked about to this point? Feel free to just unmute yourself and ask an oral question, or if we've gotten any questions through chat, please read those to us.
Gary, we have a few in chat, and I'll just go ahead and hit those quickly. The first one is, and you may have answered these, so just let us know, how does pollution from generating electricity from coal or nuclear plants compare to pollution from gasoline engines?
That's a very good question, and it's one that has been studied by several academic groups. And the bottom line is this. Depending on how electricity is produced in your state, it may be that you could match the pollution impact or the emissions impact if you had a car that got a mere 70 miles per gallon. But in states that have made good progress toward renewables, there just is no gasoline vehicle that would allow you to match the emissions efficiency of an electric car. And when I'm talking about the emissions efficiency, I'm not only talking about the emissions when you operate the car, but the emissions that were involved in producing the car. From well to wheels, electric cars in almost every state are by far the best thing you can do for the environment.
Okay, the next question is, how can the industry use the term ZEV, zero emissions vehicle, when they're simply shifting the emissions from the vehicle tailpipe to the power plant smokestack?
Well, that's a good question and a good point. The term zero emission vehicle was actually invented by the California Air Resources Board. And they had a specific meaning for that. And that was a vehicle that does not emit anything while it's going down the road. You're right. When you use electricity, you're using something that did produce emissions when it was when the electricity was made. Unless, of course, you're like me. I've got solar panels on my roof. So when I drive my electric car around town, I am literally creating zero emissions because I got all my electrons right off the roof.
Mhm.
Gary, you can also buy RECs to cover your charging.
Very good.
There's a comment from George Borchter. GM just announced that they are not going to make an investment in Nikola, a truck maker.
Yes, that is correct. Did somebody else want to address
There he
that?
is, you got him.
Yeah, I know I have them.
That's the first time we've had a face.
Yeah,
Let me mute them.
There has been some scandal about Nikola. And at first it looked like they had good technology for making electric trucks. Now there's some question about what their technology is and whether or not they acquired it legally. And GM has washed their hands of the affair.
Okay, we have gotten quite a few questions in here. So let me know when you're ready to stop taking questions. Why are manufacturers developing PHEV if internal combustion engines are obsolete?
Well, that's something that I'll deal with a little bit later. So I'm going to skip that question.
Okay, and this might have appeared in your spreadsheet. Does Subaru have any EV plans?
Check the spreadsheet.
Okay. Is the technology available yet to use an electronic vehicle as a generator in the event of a power outage? Is wireless inductive charging safe if one was worried about the effects of EMFs?
I really can't comment on the safety of wireless inductive charging other than saying we've all been using it for years at small voltages with our toothbrushes and our shavers. Concerning the first part of the question, and I've already forgotten what it was.
Is the technology available yet to use an electronic vehicle as a generator?
Yes.
So an electric vehicle as a generator in the event of a power outage?
Yes. So far, the only production vehicle that has that capability is the Nissan Leaf. That has a charging standard called CHAdeMO, which is a two-way standard. It allows you to charge the vehicle from your house, or you can charge the house from your vehicle. That two-way standard has recently been recommended for inclusion in a new version of the combined charging standard, or CCS. To my knowledge, no one is yet producing that new standard, but you can expect in the next year or two that two-way CCS will be on the market. And if you have a two-way CCS plug on a car that offers that option, you then would have the ability to use your car to get you through a blackout.
Okay. Can you speak to the current and future availability of lithium?
That's something I have not studied up on. I'd rather not make an ignorant statement.
Okay, thank you. We have three more. Is there an electric vehicle that can pull a camping trailer of 4,000 to 5,000 pounds?
Yes, when we get to the next section, I'll be giving you the towing capacity for some of the trucks if we get all the way to the end.
Awesome. Future of battery range.
The future of battery range is just nonstop up. As you'll recall, when Tesla first introduced their Model S, which was what, about 4 or 5 years ago, it had a range of 250 miles and everybody thought, wow. Currently, I think I showed that the Tesla has a 402-mile range that was recently increased to 409. And Tesla is now talking in terms of making the Model S battery capable of 650 miles of range within the next 2 or 3 years. Range is just going to keep getting better and better.
Thank you. One more. Any thoughts on the Rivian truck? And then we'll move on.
We'll talk about the Rivian at the very end of the presentation.
Great. I think we're all set.
Okay, anybody have a quick question through unmute?
Yes, I have a question about the range in terms of temperature, because we have a Volt and it doesn't get a great range anyway, only about 40, 45 miles, but in the winter it's significantly less, 25 to 30. Is that the case with all of these batteries?
Yes, that is the case with all batteries in general. That is, at low temperatures, they do not hold as much electricity. Another factor, of course, and this is especially true with battery electrics, is that in the wintertime, all vehicles get less mileage because winter conditions are tougher on all kinds of vehicles. In an electric vehicle, you don't have waste heat from an engine to heat the cabin, so you have to use electric resistance heat or a heat pump in order to heat the cabin. That also reduces the distance you can go. But it is true that in all cases, batteries produce less range in the wintertime and more range in the summertime.
Right. So just one quick follow-up. So if a manufacturer is saying a 200-mile range for a battery, that's in the summer. In the winter, is it down by 25% like our experience has been? Is that roughly what you understand?
Well, the range figures as well as the efficiency figures do not come from manufacturer. They come from the Environmental Protection Agency, which does all the testing. The same agency that tells you how many miles per gallon to put on the sticker for a gas car. And for instance, you have a Volt, I have a Honda Clarity. EPA said that my electric range would be 47 miles. And in moderate weather, that's approximately correct. Wintertime, I get in the 30s. Summertime, I get in the 50s. And when it was brand new, low 60s. So the EPA figure is normally a middle of the road figure.
Thank you.
Our manufacturer is looking at charging batteries with solar panels on the vehicle itself. Thinking much of the time, if it's in a parking lot, it's just sitting there getting warm anyway.
Yes, there are a couple of manufacturers that offer that as an option or have announced that they will offer it as an option. There's one really small company, I'm not sure if they're going to make it, that has an entire roof and hood of solar panels. And they claim that you can run short distances if you park it outside without using any energy off the grid. But frankly, solar panels on a surface as small as the roof of a car are never going to produce enough electricity to keep the car rolling. That you can simply supplement the charging. Okay, I'm going to propose that we move on. And we're going to talk now about what I'm calling best of class. Everything I've told you so far was objective data that you can check up on the web and make sure I'm not telling you any lies. But I'm now going to give you my personal subjective judgments based on all the research I've done over the last year or so on what I think are some really outstanding cars in each type. Now I'm going to list prices as well as range and efficiency. The prices are all base model manufacturer suggested retail price. And as you all know, that number is just a starting point. You can gussy up almost any car with lots of expensive options. And depending on how the market is, you can sometimes bargain your way down to less than the MSRP. And as we just talked about, the range figure that I'm going to show you is going to be what EPA has calculated, which is approximately correct for spring and fall conditions. I'm going to talk about 4 types of vehicles: pure hybrids, plug-in hybrids, battery electric sedans and SUVs, and at the very end, we'll talk about battery electric trucks. Okay, in the class of hybrid vehicles, first of all, why would you ever want to pick a hybrid when there's other things on the market? Well, for one thing, the price premium over a gas vehicle is rather small. With the Toyota Camry, which is the hybrid that I had, model for model, you pay $2,400 extra to get the hybrid drivetrain on any of the Camry line. So that's not much, and you're going to more than make that back in fuel savings. Hybrids are dramatically more efficient because right off the bat, a hybrid eliminates what a gasoline car does miserably, and that is sitting at stoplights or accelerating from a stoplight. You do all that with electricity and it's much better. The other thing about a hybrid is that the experience of driving it and fueling it is absolutely the same as with a gas-powered car. There is no plug. So the only way you make electricity is either using the engine generator or with regenerative braking. So you just drive it like any other car, and yet it's environmentally responsible and much more economical. In the hybrid vehicles, you got to start with the Toyota Prius. It's the original. It is still, according to Consumer Reports, the top-rated compact hybrid available in this country. It gets a very impressive 52 miles per gallon and sells base price for only $24,500. It is proven technology, and it's a car that has millions and millions of miles of demonstrated capability. If you're in the market for something a little bit larger, Honda has an Accord hybrid that is a mid-size sedan. It's been around for 2 or 3 years. I have several friends that own them. It has Honda's legendary reliability. It's a car that you can run forever. This is a 5-passenger sedan, 48 miles per gallon on gas, and sells a base price of only 26 something. So it's a very attractive option. For years, I drove a Toyota Camry hybrid, and I loved that car. I think it's a mid-size miracle. It's the largest body that Toyota makes, well, except the Avalon, I think it's a couple inches longer, but it's a very large, roomy, comfortable car. It has Toyota reliability. Consumer Reports says it is the highest rated mid-sized hybrid sedan available in this country, 51 miles per gallon, which is astounding for a car of that size. And the base price is a little over $27,000. Now, if you're into SUVs, Toyota has a hybrid version of the RAV4, which is their best-selling compact SUV. It is a heavier vehicle, and it's taller, more wind resistance. It only gets 40 miles to the gallon, but the base price is still quite attractive. Now, the next step up in electric vehicles is plug-ins. And you might ask, why would I buy a plug-in? Someone asked that question. Well, it is admittedly a bridge technology. This is something that is halfway between driving a gas-powered car and driving a pure electric. But if you have a plug-in, you can drive for anywhere between 25 to 50 miles on just electric, which means for all your local driving, you're driving an electric car. You're saving money and the environment, but you have no range anxiety. Every time I take a long trip, I burn a little gas. No big deal. You do pay a larger price premium to get a plug-in hybrid because the battery is larger, and batteries are still somewhat expensive. But that price premium is recovered through fuel savings. If you have a plug-in hybrid, like I do, you're going to feel largely immune to gas price volatility. You just keep driving around electric, and if price ever drops really low, well, stop in and top off the tank. It is a bridge technology. It's designed to help people who are not quite ready to make the full commitment to a battery electric car, still able to drive electric perhaps 90% of the time and save money doing it. Now, Again, Toyota Prius has to be mentioned first. They had one of the first plug-in hybrids that was available for mass market. The Prius Prime is the plug-in version. It is the same size as the regular Prius, gets 54 miles per gallon when it's running on gas, but on the electricity, which is the equivalent of a gallon of gas, it can go 133 miles. That is an astounding number. And the car sells for only $28,000. Only reason I don't have one is because it only has 25 miles of EV range, but it still has a full-size gas tank, so the total range is 640 miles. If you're interested in a regular sedan configuration, the Hyundai Ioniq is a growing presence in electric cars. Hyundai doesn't sell a whole lot in this country, but this is a fairly attractive compact hatchback. It gets 52 miles per gallon while running on gas, 119 miles per gallon equivalent. The price tag is somewhat similar to the Prius. It has a slightly larger range of 29 miles for electric, and it also has a full-size gas tank. I drive a plug-in hybrid, and this is it. This is the Honda Clarity. Mine's green also. It's a full mid-size sedan, very comfortable for 5 passengers, and it's made by Honda. So I believe that it's going to be a very reliable car. Its gasoline mileage is rated by EPA as 42 miles per gallon. We took a long trip out west a couple years ago, and I never got that little. I got in mid 40s, and one time got 49 miles to the gallon. Its efficiency on electricity is still very, very good. Base price, $33,000. The big deal for me is it has 47 miles of EPA rated electric range. And as I say, in the summertime, I always get in the 50s. In the wintertime, it's around 30. It only has 340 miles of total range because guess what? I have a 7-gallon gas tank. They figured with that much electric range, why do you want to carry around a big heavy tank full of gas that you're not going to use very often? So when I stop into the gas station, nobody's making much money off me. If you're into a really large vehicle, I mentioned the Chrysler Pacifica before. It is a plug-in hybrid that is the most fuel-efficient minivan available. It's a big car, so it only gets 30 miles per gallon on gas, and it's 82 miles per gas equivalent. Base price is $40,000, but it has 32 miles of electric range. For a vehicle that large, that's pretty good. It has a full-size gas tank, so you can go 520 miles total. This is such an attractive package that when Waymo started their Phoenix self-driving car project, they put in an order for 62,000 of these Pacifica plug-in hybrids. Now, they haven't taken delivery on all those yet. Phoenix isn't that big. But this is the car that they're intending to make the basis as they roll out their self-driving taxi service nationwide. Finally, if you want a really big car, but want to plug in, Volvo makes the XC90 Recharge as a plug-in vehicle. It's a full 7-passenger SUV, a huge car, only gets 27 miles per gallon on gas and only 55 on gas equivalents. Got a pretty hefty price tag and not very much electric range. But if you want a plug-in hybrid that you can drive to the grocery store on electric, this is a car you should consider. Finally, the category of battery electrics. Why would you want to choose to jump all the way to a battery electric? Well, for one thing, this is where all the other technologies are heading. As I say, a plug-in hybrid is an attractive car for someone that still has some range anxiety, but it is a very complex car. It has both a gas engine and battery electric. When you go to a pure battery electric, all of a sudden the car gets very simple again. It doesn't have an engine. It doesn't have a gas tank. It doesn't have an oil pan. In most cases, it doesn't have even a transmission. The car doesn't have to do any engineering to shift from gas power to battery power and back and forth. It's a very simple machine. In fact, I think we're doing okay on time. Let me tell you a story. that was related by the retired chief of research for General Motors. When Tesla first introduced their Model S, General Motors went to the website, bought one, and took it to their teardown warehouse. They have a large warehouse just north of Detroit, where every time a competitor comes up with an interesting car, they do a teardown. They take the car literally completely apart. Every nut and bolt is removed, and they spread out all the pieces in a very orderly way that's the same for all cars, so that their engineers can look to see what did their competitor do and how did they do it. When they told that off on a Tesla Model S, the chief of R&D said, guys, we got to call the CEO of the company. He's got to see this. They showed him first a teardown of their own car, a gas-powered Chevy. Then they showed him the teardown of a Toyota Prius. And that had a few more parts because it had both a gas engine and the electric drive. Then they showed him the teardown of the Tesla. And he just stood there with his mouth open. There are dramatically fewer parts. And the first reaction of the CEO of General Motors when he saw the teardown of the Model S was, we better start talking to the union. This is going to have a huge impact because it just doesn't take as many people to put this together. In fact, the CEO of Mercedes-Benz has said they expect their labor force to decline by 70% when they switch to all electrics. It's just a simpler vehicle. Dramatically fewer moving parts, much less maintenance involved. If you have a home charging system, you leave the garage every morning with a full tank. Electrics have 200 to 400 miles of range, which is way more than enough for local driving. And with the public charging infrastructure that is already in place and rapidly expanding, you can go anywhere in the United States in a battery electric car and not have to worry about running out of gas. So in battery electrics, we have to mention first the Nissan Leaf. That was the original mass market battery electric car in this country. They started selling them in 2010. And it's still the price leader. There are two versions of the Leaf available. There's a standard range and an extended range. As you can see, their efficiency numbers are pretty good. The standard range will only go 149 miles. That's because the battery is fairly small, which is how they keep the price down. Their extended range version will go 246 miles. Base price of $31,600 for the standard range Leaf. Now, you'll remember that General Motors, Nissan, and Tesla are not eligible currently for the $7,500 credit. So you would actually have to pay this full base price. Even on the extended range version, it's only $38,000. You can buy a Nissan Leaf from your local dealer now. And because the car's been around for 10 years, there are a fair number of them on the used car markets, and a used Leaf can really be a bargain. There are some tremendous prices out there. We, of course, have to mention the Chevy Bolt. That's the first mass market American battery electric car from General Motors. And we will proudly point out that all Chevy Bolts are running with batteries that were made right here in Holland by LG Chem. Its efficiency numbers are quite good. The range is 250 miles. Base price of only $36,000. So again, that's a pretty good investment, and it's available now. Of course, Tesla made the market for battery electrics, and they're still the market leader. The Model 3 midsize sedan is the best-selling electric sedan in the United States, and I believe in the world. Its efficiency numbers are stunning. Tesla has the highest electric efficiency of any brand because they engineered their cars from the ground up as electrics. The standard range Model 3 has a price of $38,000. The long range version, which has 353 miles of range, goes for $47,000. The standard range Tesla Model 3 is a little hard to come by. They don't like to make as many of those because it's not as profitable as the long range version. But I believe that you can find one if you try hard. You have to work at it. But all Teslas are available now. There is a SUV version of the Tesla Model 3. It's called the Model Y. It's a smaller, less expensive version of the Tesla Model X, which is their big fancy SUV. It has pretty good efficiency. 326 miles of range for an SUV is quite good, and it sells for $52,000. The car that I use on my first slide that many people are excited about is the Mustang Mach-E. This is styled as a Mustang. Its undercarriage is built as a compact SUV. It's Ford's first battery electric vehicle. It's similar in size to the Tesla Model Y. It's a rear-wheel drive car. EPA has not yet done any testing on it, so we don't know what the efficiency will be. Ford estimates that the range will be either 230 on the base model or 300 miles on the extended range. They have announced the price, $43,000 for the base model, and Ford is eligible for the $7,500 credit. So that's going to be a very attractive package for the money. The extended range versions goes for just under $50,000. You can order one right now. They are anticipating that deliveries will be, quote, late 2020. My read is that means early next year. But this is a car that a lot of people are pretty excited about. I can't wait until there are some that we can actually test drive and see how it compares to a Tesla. If you're interested in a larger, more luxurious car, you should consider the Jaguar. The I-Pace has been on the market for about a year. It's similar in size to the Model S from Tesla. It's a rear-wheel drive sport luxury car. It has 234 miles of range, $70,000 price tag. And if you've always wanted to own a Jaguar, this would be a nice way to do it. Finally, I need to mention the Audi e-tron. This is a car that's been on the American market for about a year. It is a luxury SUV. I have not driven one, but I'm told that it's a very, very nice car and has a price tag that is competitive again with the Tesla Model S. That, as well as the Jaguar, are available now. And of course, we have to talk about the Tesla Model S. If you're in the market for a luxury sports sedan, this is the car that broke Consumer Reports rating scale. It is considered to be the highest rated battery electric luxury sedan available in the world. Their efficiency numbers are pretty amazing for a large car. And in the extended range version, 402 miles of range. List price when I put these slides together was $69,000 for the base model and $75,000 for the extended range. But as more electric sedans are coming on the market, Tesla has twice in the last 4 months cut the price of their Model S. And there are people who are assuming that the price might go down again. So if you're interested in a Model S, keep your ears to the ground for the rumor mills. It may very well be that Teslas are going to become even more competitive in price. And finally, if you're interested in a large SUV, I should mention that the Volvo XC40 Recharge is a battery electric compact sport utility vehicle. It's smaller than the Mustang or the Tesla Model Y, but it has a pretty small price tag too of $55,000. It's not available just yet, but the local Volvo dealer told me they expected to have some on their showroom by January. Finally, and I think we're doing well on time, so we can talk about something that's not really available now, but there are going to be a lot of models coming on the market in the next 18 months. And a lot of people think that battery electric trucks are really going to be the largest share of the electric car market very soon in the United States. Because already, what's the largest selling vehicle in all of the USA? The Ford F-150. Uh, Probably the first vehicle that's going to come online, because it's already been announced, is the Tesla Cybertruck. This crazy looking vehicle that clearly is trying to make it obvious that it's not imitating anybody else. This is the car with the claim that its windows will be bulletproof. The entire body is made of aluminum. They're building a gigafactory in Texas right now near Austin, where they're going to be producing this truck, and they expect to be producing it by the end of 2021 and making deliveries late next year or very early in 2022. It comes in two different versions. The base version has a range of 250 miles, and it's got a respectable 0 to 60 time. It has a single electric motor. The extended range version has a range of 300 miles. It does 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds because it's got dual motors, front and rear axle, separately driven. The towing capacity on the big one is 10,000 pounds. Even the less expensive version is going to be able to carry the 4,000 pound trailer that someone mentioned, or something considerably larger with ease. And of course, with all that torque at low end, I imagine this thing could yank a rather heavy boat out of the water quite quickly. The base model is going to sell for 40,000, and the extended range version will be 50,000. They're taking pre-orders now, and as I say, expecting deliveries in about a year or a little bit longer. The vehicle that has gotten a lot of excitement, especially among fleet owners, is the Rivian. Rivian is a company that was founded just north of Detroit, and it was a group of people that said, nobody's really doing much for trucks, and we think that that's where the real potential is in battery electrics. So they started with a clean piece of paper and designed from the ground up a battery electric truck. It's going to be available in two different body styles. What I'm showing you here is their pickup version called the R1T. They're also going to have a sport utility vehicle body on it called the R1S. They're going to be building this in a factory that they bought from Mitsubishi in Northern Illinois. They're currently in the process of installing all their manufacturing equipment in that factory, and they're going to begin production early in 21. This vehicle has some pretty amazing specs. And once their specifications were published, Amazon invested and bought, I believe, 20% of the company. Ford has also made a major investment in this company. They believe that this is going to be the basis for a really, really exciting truck. It has 4-motor all-wheel drive. Each of the wheels has its own separate in-wheel motor, driven and controlled separately, so you're going to have fantastic traction and control. It has 110 volt and 12 volt outlets inside and outside the vehicle. It is designed specifically for construction use, and you can supposedly run most of the electric appliances at a construction site from this battery without ever having to connect to the grid. It has a 0 to 60 time of 3 seconds, a towing capacity, 11,000 pounds, range of 300 miles, just amazing specs. It is already, every truck will come out of the factory with all the cameras and sensors necessary for autonomous driving. Rivian is not attempting to develop their own self-driving software. They're going to let other people do that, like Waymo, but they're building in all the sensors that will be necessary to run that software, so that when somebody, let's again assume Waymo, finally is able to release their self-driving software to other manufacturers, they'll be able to simply install it and you'll have a full self-driving truck. This vehicle is designed for off-road use. They have demonstrated that you can ford water 3 feet deep in an electric vehicle with no problems of shorting or any kind of difficulty. And the price tag is only $67,500. And this vehicle would be available for the $7,500 federal credit, that's a pretty amazing price for a vehicle with these specs. They are accepting pre-orders, but they're not going to be making deliveries until the middle of 2022. This is the vehicle that Amazon decided that this would be a terrific basis for an electric delivery vehicle. They have placed an order for 100,000 Rivian trucks with a delivery van body on it. Ford also made the investment, and there are a lot of people who believe that the Ford F-150 electric is really going to be built on the Rivian chassis. But concerning the best-selling vehicle in America, Ford has declared for over a year now that they are going to have an electric version of the F-150. It's going to be built in the River Rouge plant where the current F-150 is built. They have not announced the specs, but they have adopted the tagline of, "It's a workhorse, not a show horse." This is a truck that they claim will have huge power and towing capacity. And as I say, the rumor is that it's going to be actually built on the chassis of the R1T, but it's going to have a Ford F-150 aluminum body on it. Price, they have not said anything. The rumor mills are claiming that it might be priced around $55,000. That would only be possible if they have a fairly high volume of production, but we'll just have to wait and see. Ford's not accepting any pre-orders, and they're not predicting that they'll be delivering until 2022. But this is a vehicle that may very well do for electric trucks what IBM did for personal computers when they finally came out with one. This will be the endorsement that says electric trucks are here. Or if you really would like to have the ultimate, you can right now put in an order for a Hummer electric truck. This is the super truck. I could entertain you for a long time with all the outrageous specs of this vehicle. 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, up to 1,000 horsepower available. It's going to have a range, GM is estimating, of about 350 miles, maybe more. And it's got just some ridiculous features. It has adjustable height. If you are driving off-road and find yourself caught on a rock or maybe going over a railroad track, you can just push a button and the whole vehicle rises up over whatever you're caught on and off you go. It will crab walk. All 4 wheels will turn. So you can actually exit a mess that you're in by going sideways. It's going to have outlets like the Rivian has. It's going to be an amazing car. It's going to have Cadillac Super Cruise built in as standard. And the price tag is a mere $113,000. But they're taking orders now, I believe. I'm not sure about that. And they're expecting in less than a year to be able to make deliveries. Okay, a few final thoughts before we go to our final question and answer period. I hope I have convinced you that the EV market is exploding. Within 5 years, we have already promises of over 70 battery electric vehicles. Heck, General Motors and VW will each be producing 30 models apiece. Tesla will have their full line available by then, and every other manufacturer is jumping into the electric market. Battery tech is advancing at breathtaking speed, and if current technology doesn't lure you into an electric car, I promise you sometime in the next few years, an even more exciting technology will. Battery tech is affecting the major cost component of electric cars and the major performance component, and the advances are stunning. The price premium versus gas cars, according to Bloomberg, is going to be disappearing within 5 years. And of course, Elon Musk would like to say that it's going to disappear in 3 or 4 years. But no question, within 5 years, you're going to pay a premium if you want to have a fossil fueled car. Range anxiety was a big barrier to electrics early on. It's fading away. Public charging network is growing by leaps and bounds. Range is increasing on the vehicles. That's why plug-in hybrids are going to be fading away, because They're a compromise, and that compromise is not going to be necessary much longer. And a lot of people feel that battery electric trucks may end up outselling sedans and SUVs within a few years. That will really make battery electrics mainstream. Actually, I can argue that already there's an electric vehicle for every need. If you don't want to mess with plugs, just buy a hybrid. You can get tremendous fuel economy, never have to worry about plugging in, and just drive it as though it were an ordinary car, but you'll have tremendous fuel economy. If you still have range anxiety, but would like an electric car, that's kind of the situation I was in 2 years ago when I bought my Honda Clarity. Buy a plug-in. With a plug-in, you can go anywhere you want, and yet for local driving, you're driving an electric car. If you want to go all the way, save the planet and money, buy a battery electric. I would also argue that there are battery electrics for every budget. Used Leafs and used Chevy Volts can be very inexpensive. You can get new hybrids from $23,000, plug-ins from $27,000, battery electrics as low as $32,000. And if you've got a taste for luxury, there's a lot of attractive cars available. Does anybody have questions about what we've talked about with these best of class?
I'll go ahead and read a few from the chat. You answered the Rivian question nicely. When you consider the environment with battery recycling, is the EV still a great buy?
When they talk about battery recycling, just exactly what are you talking about?
Alan,
Someone can expand on that question?
When I recycle a battery after the lifetime has expired, then I need to count that in terms of the effect on the environment. In fact, that's why I did not buy an EV a few years back.
Okay, that's a good point to raise. Actually, automotive batteries are considered to be used up or no longer suitable if they drop below 80% of their rated capacity. That's because you're now carrying around the same heavy weight but getting less energy out of it. But used EV batteries already have a secondary market because, for instance, Consumers Energy is putting up wind-powered and solar-powered generating stations. They really want to be able to store electricity during the day so they can use it at night. A number of companies are putting together just large, heavy collections of used EV batteries, which no longer are necessarily desirable for powering a car, but they do a great job of storing electricity off the grid. So I think it's going to be a very long time before you find electric car batteries actually being destroyed or taken apart. There's a market for them. And with CATL's technology for the quote million-mile battery, I think we can be looking at used batteries being still useful for many, many years in the future.
thank you. Who is the company that is developing the solar roof and hood panels?
The company that has a car that is covered with them is a very small company whose name escapes me. Send me that question by email and I'll look it up and send you back the answer.
Okay. What is the future of home battery charging stations?
Well, I personally feel that home chargers are the future. The public charging infrastructure is an important thing for people who want to take long trips. But let's face it, most of us in a month don't take that many long road trips. Most of our driving is local. And it's just really convenient when you come home at night, if your battery is getting low, to just plug in the car. You can do as I do and tell it to recharge itself at 1 o'clock in the morning, so the power company will love you. It's just extremely convenient. They don't cost that much. If you have solar panels on the roof, you can literally recharge your car for free. I think home chargers are going to be around forever.
Thank you. You mentioned that several of these vehicles are engineered with rear-wheel drive. Are the snow-related issues with rear-wheel drive still an issue with a battery-heavy car?
Essentially, yes. If you choose a car with rear-wheel drive, that does present some problems in snow. As you know, some people say, well, when heavy weather comes, put something heavy in your trunk to hold down your rear wheels. Well, if you've got 1,000 pounds of batteries under your floor plan, that automatically gives you a little bit better traction. But yes, rear-wheel drive electric still has some of the characteristics of rear-wheel drive for gas.
Okay. How does driving range decrease as a function of driving speed, comparing, say, 30 miles per hour, 55 miles per hour, and 70 miles per hour?
The physics answer to that is that wind resistance increases with a square of velocity. So you can do the math. At 60 miles an hour, you are pushing 4 times the wind resistance that you did at 30 miles an hour. So if you wanted to drive extremely slowly, you could get much better battery range than the EPA will project. All of EPA's projections are based on a combination of city and highway driving. Highway driving is at 70 miles an hour. City is at 35 and 45.
Okay. Are all battery chemicals or chemistries proprietary? What are the principles of those that have been divulged?
This is beyond my expertise. Basically, everybody that manufactures a battery has their own secret sauce that they like to claim makes their battery better. And yes, those are all proprietary. It is secretive enough that we have 3 times asked LG Chem if they would allow us to do a factory tour, and they've turned us down flat every time, saying, no, there's stuff going on here that outsiders are not allowed to see.
Thank you. The last one in the chat is, how reliant are solid state battery technologies on rare earth elements predominantly sourced from China?
That's a really good question. At the moment, lithium ion batteries normally use lithium and a couple of other rare earth minerals that are indeed sourced from China and a couple of African countries, none of which are considered to be, really reliable sources. Tesla has announced as part of their battery day that one of the changes they're going to make to their battery chemistry is to greatly reduce the amount of, I think it's cobalt, that they put into their anodes. To reduce that, they're also trying to reduce the amount of lithium. So battery manufacturers are aware of the issue and are trying to reduce their reliance on rare earths. But until we get to a solid state battery that doesn't use much lithium, there's always going to be some dependence.
So that does it for the questions in chat. We are at 11:05. We have committed to about 5 more minutes. If anybody has a question, just unmute your mic.
Gary, I have a question. In terms of the infrastructure that's already out there, did you say that regardless of the manufacturer, that a car could be charged at any of those that you had the dots on the map for?
Any car that uses the CCS, or the combined charging standard, which is everybody except Tesla and the Nissan Leaf,
Okay.
can use any CCS charging station.
And how long is the charge? About 20 minutes, did you say?
Well, no, that depends upon a number of things.
Oh.
It depends upon the maximum charging rate of the station that you pull up to.
Okay.
Almost all of them are what they call DC fast chargers, but they can charge at various different voltages. The voltage they can use depends on what the car is set up for. So for instance, if you had a lot of money and you bought a Porsche Taycan, it uses a 350 volt charging system in the car. So if you pull up to a CCS charging station that can handle 350 volts, you can recharge that entire car in something like 45 minutes. But if you have a car like mine, which has, I think, only an 80 volt charging capacity, and I pull up to a really high powered charging station, it still can only charge at the rate my car can handle.
Okay, thank you. Enjoyed the presentation.
Well, thank you.
We know what happens when you drive a car with a gas tank at high speed into a fixed obstacle. We've seen that in movies plenty of times. What happens when you drive a fully charged electric vehicle into a fixed obstacle?
The safety question is a good one to ask. The short answer is that the very earliest lithium-ion batteries, because they have a liquid electrolyte, did have a tendency to catch fire if you crash them into something. There have only been a few instances where that happened. Both of the instances where Teslas were involved in crashes, the battery did not catch fire. But current models have a number of features designed to prevent battery fires. And of course, solid state batteries are incapable of fire. So that takes care of the fire issue. As far as crash worthiness, that depends on the individual car. Obviously, even with a gas car, the fact that you've got a heavy engine up front is neither good nor bad. What matters is the crumple zones and the energy absorbing zones in the front of the car that can slowly absorb the force of the impact. In a battery electric car, almost always the batteries are under the floor pan, so they're not going to be exposed up in the quote engine area. But it all depends on what kind of a chassis you put in front of that car. I imagine a Volvo is going to be pretty safe.
My concern is if bodily integrity were lost, you've got a fair bit of electrical energy seeking to discharge as rapidly as possible. And the result may not be pretty. I'm not planning to find out, mind you. And I'm sure that's been looked at. I didn't know if the hazards of that type of collision are sufficiently novel as to be noteworthy or not.
I don't know much. I've not read much about that particular issue. I do know that in a couple of states, the first responders, ambulance crews, and fire crews do have a training module that tells them what they should do if they encounter a crashed electric car to protect themselves from any kind of a sudden discharge. I have not heard of any cases where there actually was an injury or a catastrophe as a result of sudden discharge.
It is true that gasoline cars are far more likely to catch fire than electric vehicles. That's well established already. Another unrelated factor is right now with my electric car, I'm not paying, some people think I'm not paying any gas tax at all. The truth is I pay a premium each year when I buy my tags for my Tesla Model 3 that's about the equivalent of 20 to 25,000 miles of Michigan road tax. However, I'm not paying any federal road tax right now with my Tesla Model 3.
Thank you, Bill.
I have a comment and a question. Bridget said this has been so helpful to demystify the electric vehicle proposition. Thank you. And Lori asks, will Nissan Leaf have a CCS adapter?
I don't think there's an adapter. I don't know that there's an adapter for older Nissan Leafs. Starting with the 2020 model year, Nissan has switched to the CCS standard. So if you were to buy a brand new Nissan Leaf, I believe it would be a CCS.
Well, thank you. We did commit to a hard stop at 11:10. It's a little bit after that. I would allow one more question if Gary's willing. So if you would like to unmute your mic for any other question or comment, please do. Otherwise, we will close.
Is the incentive extended to lease purchases?
Yes, leases are eligible for the incentive, but it is whoever has title to the car gets the incentive. So for instance, if you were to lease a Mustang Mach-E, the dealer that executes the lease gets the credit. But of course that reduces, his cost, and therefore it reduces your lease price. But the credit goes to whoever owns the car.
Thank you. Well, for the people who are left, which is quite a few, Gary, this is very, very interesting topic. And thank you for just a robust presentation. We appreciate it so much. So thank you. And we appreciate your time and all the effort in educating us on this subject.
Okay, be sure to send me that one question. I didn't know the answer, and I will send the answer back.
I will. Thank you for the reminder so I can look for it in the chat. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.